that. So, um, first off, I'm sort of thinking, I wonder if this would be a bonus kind of thing because one of the things recommended was that we do sort of like an intro. It should probably be on I think it's going to be on the podcast. Uh, Change up the intro a little bit. And one of the things would be like, probably like 30 seconds or less. Good thing, bad thing that happened this week, or since the last time around, which will be interesting when we do back to backs. We'll just have to make something up between, like, if we had two good things, we'll pick one and pick another or something like that. But it was actually something Natalie threw at me that was, I think it's a pretty cool little idea to throw out there from a podcast, just as a little bit of like it's a little different, and it's a way to get people to, can know sort of what's going on with us. And we can always use that. That might spin into topics at some point, but I figure it's just a good, like, quick little, like, hey, what's gone good, what's gone bad kind of thing. And it just breaks up our normal introduction. So that was one of the things I was thinking. We talked about yesterday something that would be a good topic for the podcast. And I'm trying to remember where we did that. Mm, or what that was.
Did that have to do with the contract or statement of work or
I don't remember. That's what I'm trying to let's see.
was it getting
Oh, here
requirements?
we go. Uh oh, that's right. This was the one about this is actually a pretty good one because it gets into pricing and stuff like that. And it was uh developer versus designer and stuff like that. It was sort of like flipping those things. So I think I want to talk about that a little bit and about what understanding where your skills are and what you bring to the table, particularly as you get further into your career. I think this is a good developer journey early on. I mean, that's what you got. You got coding. You can write code and you can write it better the next year or something like that. But somewhere along the way, depending on how you do it, you're getting better at, like, you're designing solutions. You can architect an entire solution. You can put together more than just code. You're now linking systems, you're designing things, you're doing the tests behind them, you're doing all of that kind of stuff that really, even in a lot of cases, it's sort of like if you think of the SDLC process, it's really more, instead of on the implementation side, it's that requirements gathering and design, steps that are more in demand. And we've talked about that in the past when we talk about them as those people. You don't have as many people that can do that. That's usually a smaller team if you're, depending on how big your project is. And it's much more niche, basically, I guess, or like, skilled. It's more like a skilled labor versus the coders where, yeah, there's skill there, but it's not quite the same skills. Make sense?
Yeah, that works.
All right. Then we're just going to dive right into this sucker. Hello and welcome back. We are continuing our developer journey. And this episode, we are going to talk about skill sets. This gets a little bit into everybody's favorite is like, how much do I charge for what I do? And it also talks about, it's going to get us thinking a little bit about the things that we initially thought are really like our high value pieces are actually, as we go on, are not so much our high value pieces. We're getting different skill sets. Before I do that, I'll introduce myself. I am Rob Broadhead. I'm one of the founders of Developreneur, also a founder of RB Consulting, where we integrate, simplify, and automate your world to get you down to very simple products. We're trying something a little new. So I'm going to throw this at Michael first, and then I'll come back and give mine, which is basically, we're going to let him introduce himself and then give me like a quick, what's something good, like a good thing that happened today and a bad thing that happened today. Short, we can't get too far off in the weeds. So let's see how this works. Go for it.
Hey everyone, my name is Michael Malash. I'm one of the founders of Developreneur and founder of Envision QA, where we help small to mid-sized businesses and clinicians build software solutions that help improve their business. Now, for good and bad this week, the good, I've been able to successfully get a old database system kind of articulated, backed up into a newer system. Downside, I still have some data issues I got to work out. So where it could be good, almost 100%. At least I'm down to 1% that's failing.
That's a pretty good and bad. So I think I'll sort of go the same way. Is good is I managed to get there's a application I've worked on for quite a while that I hadn't looked at for a while. So the bad thing is when I looked at it, it's like, oh, there was some stuff that needed some cleaning because there's some. It's one of those you come back 6 months later, you're like, what the heck was I thinking? Even though it's been a couple of years, but it was quick and dirty. So the bad thing is I looked at it, I was like, crap, I got a lot of work to do. The good news is it wasn't too hard to refactor it. There's like 18 places, basically the same section of code was there, turned it into one section of code, cleaned them all up. Boom. As they say, Bob's your uncle, got a lot better, lot faster, lot smoother interface. So there you go. We've survived this. So we will continue on. I want to talk about, in particular, this gets into a little bit into the steps of the SDLC, the software development lifecycle, which is you gather requirements, you design, implementation, testing, deployment, maintenance, blah, blah, blah. You're going through those basically. I'm sure I missed one, but it's those six. Now, I think because we start out, our resume, our calling card is code. It's what language do you know? What have you done in it, basically? And for us, a lot of us, particularly when we start out, it's just like, well, I know that. I've got X years of this technology. I've been doing, Java for 3 years, and now I've been doing Java for 4 years. That's how we grow. But there's a point, and it's usually, I think a lot of times it's once you get into that 3 to 5 year range, and definitely once you're getting into that 5 to 7 year range into your career and beyond, that there are other things that matter on your resume and your value, which also is how you actually charge, like what your rate is if you go out and you consult or you've got a side hustle. Now, it's tempting to just say, you've got this steadily increasing value that's based on you as a developer. The thing is that as you develop more and as you become a better developer, not a coder, this is where we're talking about being a better developer, there are skills and experiences you have where you are now able to do things. For example, extract a database and design a new structure for that, or gather requirements for an application. You can also help with that. There's other things around that. It's things like gathering requirements, designing a solution, estimating. You're better at estimating than you were 5 years ago or 10 years ago. Using that to help build better tests, to help design project plans and milestones and things like that. So you're sort of going to be moving out of development. Development's always good, but it's one of those, and it may be high value to some extent because you may be solving unique problems, but you also have the more, we'll call them like the softer skills of design and requirements gathering, which tend to be much, much more valuable to a project, to a customer. The other thing that's in there is we'll call them your management kinds of skills. As you probably will grow into being some sort of a lead or a mentor, but there's also some point that whether your title is manager or not, that you actually have people that you sort of direct in some way, you manage in some way, form, or fashion. And if you get down that path, then they talk about, do you have HR responsibilities like reviews and raises and stuff like that, or other stuff. But the team dynamics that you bring also will start to allow you to essentially charge a higher rate because you have maybe worked with offshore teams, worked with cross-functional teams, worked with teams that are in a hazardous or negative environment. Sometimes you get in a politically charged environment where you've worked on a project that's one person's flagship and somebody else is trying to sink it. There's these kinds of stories and skills that you bring to the table. And as you're looking at, which some of us do, and this is what got this conversation going, is some of us price ourselves, we have billing rates based more on what our function is. So if you hire us to, let's just say, for example, if you hire me to write COBOL code, that's one rate. If you hire me to write Java code, that's another rate. Spoiler alert, the COBOL code is going to be an insanely high thing because I don't want to ever do that. But if you hire, for example, to consult or to manage, or to manage a team, it's going to be a different rate. If it's to design a solution as opposed to just code something that has been already highly required, the requirements have been highly refined and we're ready to go, those are different skill sets and different rates. And part of that works with, it's the market rate, and part of it has to do with like where you can assign skills and not. And then it does get into situations where it's like, yeah, you could hire, us to go write HTML code and do a very simple little application, but we're probably not going to want to do that at all, because the rate we're going to want to charge, that we need to charge, it's sort of our minimum, is going to be way beyond what that work, really entails, because you can find somebody less skilled. Those are my opening thoughts, my parting, my initial shots across the bow. So I want to throw that to you. And what are your thoughts, and what have you experienced with this?
So one of the biggest problems I've had with this particular topic, and we've discussed this for years, is as we have moved up in different positions with different companies, and that we get different salaries, and certain markets will pay certain things. But then as we started branching out on our own, starting to become consultants, starting to build our own businesses and go after new contracts, we typically run into a couple of different areas where it's hard to say what your worth is. You essentially are selling your company or your skills to someone else. So you have to kind of prove that you can do it, but also make sure it's something that they can pay, are willing to pay, and is actually within the market. So for instance, I could charge a rate of $85 to be a Java developer to go write code, but in some markets that's too high. For instance, if we're trying to compete with overseas, typically we're going to have to offer a lower rate if we're going up against some offshore teams. Now, if we have a low bid competition where, stateside or, within a smaller sector, you could charge a higher rate because your skills aren't very limited and in demand, and there's not going to be too much competition. But the other problem you run into is, can your customer even afford that? Some of your smaller businesses don't have a large amount of capital, but they need the help. So then you run into a problem of, well, you have the skills and you probably have a solution that can help them, but is it worth your time and energy to do it? Because you're not going to be able to request the rate that you need because they just can't afford it. For instance, the co-starters I went through, there were two people that one has this great idea for an app, but she literally is still bootstrapping her business. She's getting grants and, still building the business. So she does not have the capital at all to even think about doing this. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not going to offer, or, she can't ask for guidance or things like that. More than happy to help there, but I can't write the solution for her. I mean, it's just that's not feasible. But then you have the other side of things where, you run across a project that is something that you really want to do, and you're willing to take a little bit of a cut. But like you said, there's different levels to that. So one of the problems I have always had is, when do I charge more for different services within a project or within a statement of work? And I still struggle with that today. I mean, you don't always know what you can put a price tag on what your skills are, but you need to be mindful of the market that you're in or the sector you're targeting.
I agree. And there's a lot there. That's actually probably another episode that we'll probably go into and get a little deeper into that, because there are a lot of theories and thoughts around those situations. Those are not unique to us. For example, I think one of the best, easy to digest discussions around pricing comes from Tim Ferriss's 4 Hour Work Week. As he talks about, and I think this is where he really got into it, is where he talks about quality of customer, and he talks about the kind of work and some of those kinds of things that you do. And that really has been more true to me than just about anything else. I have found that if I want to compete we'll say with like, a lower cost offshore team, then it's not worth it because I'm not going to be able to provide the quality that I want to at that lower price. And even when I've gone into customers and I've said, you know what, I get where they're at. I really want to do this work for them. And I give them a lower, a discounted rate. It ends up biting me because they get used to that. They're still wanting, really it's where you get stuck because like you have certain things that you want to bring to the table and maybe you do anyways, but then they start sort of taking that, for granted. And the next thing you know, you're being sucked into something more so than you want. One of the things I found that does work is talk to them, be very open about like, budgets and stuff like that. Say, hey, this is my rate. I don't think it's going to work for you because here's your budget or here's where you're at, and you're bootstrapping or things like that. I've got a customer, for example, where it's just where it was basically there was a huge amount of stuff that we wanted to do together. And it basically came down to, okay, what can you afford what's your budget, monthly, weekly budget kind of thing. And then what we'll do is we'll work into that. And actually in this one, I was just like, you know what, we'll aim for that. We'll probably do more than that because we need to, because there's just more work that we need to do on a weekly basis to keep it alive and to keep fresh and to not sort of have to, do a little bit of work and then pause and then come back and then do a little work and then pause and come back because there's all that restarting kind of effort that goes into it. Instead, it's like, tell you what, your burn rate, for example, I'm just picking a number. Like if your burn rate is $10 a week or like, easier is like 10 hours a week, you can afford that. Okay. But we really need to do 15 hours a week of work. Then you can do like we did, where we said, well, we're just going to charge you 10 hours a week. And we're going to be just sort of like, we're in the background, we're going to be accumulating some extra stuff. So somewhere along the way, there's going to be like, we're going to take a week off, or we're going to get to a certain point where we're actually done for a while. And then you're just going to keep getting bills to start, working off that backlog. Now, if you do something like that, beware, because it's one of those, they could disappear on you. They could screw you over. There's a lot of things that could happen there where all of that stuff could just disappear. But you can work with your customers based on, trust and things like that. If you walk into a situation where you don't trust them and they're trying to lowball you, I would just say walk away. Because if you start out in that kind of a contentious kind of relationship where they're really trying to get like squeeze every penny out of you, and you're not feeling comfortable about that, you don't think you can afford to take them on as a customer, then go with your gut and walk away. Now, if it changes over time, that's different because now you've invested, they've invested, there's all those things. But if, right away, if that's from the start, you're seeing that's where you need to just back out and say, you know what, push it off to somebody else. You're probably going to find yourself far better off not doing that project than you would have had you done it. It's a couple of my thoughts there. I'll give you some closing thoughts here before we wrap this one up.
Yeah, one of the things that brought to mind, especially with software, is the old business saying you get what you pay for. The problem with what we do in this particular industry is it's not what you get what you pay for. It's how badly is your reputation going to be damaged if you take on a project and you can't deliver for the cost. Meaning, if you don't charge enough and you can't give them the quality that you're used to, you're not going to get the referrals. You're not going to get the 5-star ratings, and it could really impact you in the industry.
That is actually, I think, what we're going to cover in the next episode. I think I want to get into that a little bit because this is where it does it. I think we'll spill over into that one and talk about some of the things you can do and some of the things that you should not do as part of reducing costs and cutting corners and some of those kinds of things. And this will be, lessons learned and some painful things. And I'll talk to you a little bit we'll go a little bit into like why I think, because we care, why we want to do these things and why they have so much attraction, but also why we have to be very careful because we can get, a bite in the buttocks, as they say. And so we have to watch out for that. But we don't bite. We are perfectly fine. Even if we were we're virtual, so it doesn't really matter. And we've had all our shots. However, you can let us know if you think our topics bite or are really cool by leaving us comments. Shoot us an email at info@developreneur.com. Check us out on YouTube, the Developreneur channel. We've got these and we've got so much other stuff. School.developreneur.com. You go out to the website, leave us something on the forums, leave us comments anywhere you use podcasts, go ahead and feel free to leave comments, reviews, all that kind of stuff. We love the feedback. We like to use that to generate topics and where we want to go, not only for single episodes, but maybe even for entire seasons as we move forward. In at some point, in the not too distant future, we'll actually be in season 23. And so now's a perfect time for you to give us some information, see if you can give us some direction for that. Where do you want to go? That being said, we'll let you get back to it. Out there and have yourself a great day, a great week, and we will talk to you next time. Bonus material.
So one thing I would throw out that we kind of briefly touched on, but didn't get into too much detail. If you are starting to go on your own, if you're kind of new to this consulting thing or new to starting, branching out from a full-time job, look at sites like Indeed, look at sites like guru.com, Freelancer, Fiverr, see what people are charging for certain things. You may have an idea of what you want to do, so go look and see what other people offer for that particular area. See what your competition is, and then kind of price around that so that you're not pricing too high and hopefully not pricing too low.
And that goes into like branding and things like that. Is do you want to be a boutique consultant where you're going to charge higher rates, but you're going to be very, much more specific in what you do? Are you going to try to, be a bargain basement and do more work, but do it fast? And there's also lost leaders. So you may go into a situation and say, hey, I really want to do this work. It's not my normal rate, but just be upfront about it and just say, hey, I've had that sometimes where I've said, I'm going to do this. I want to do this for you. I can only afford, X amount of hours a week or a month or whatever at that rate. And then I've got to go do other stuff because I've got to pay bills. There's things like that. So don't be afraid to just lay that stuff out there and say, this is what it's going to cost. This is where I'm going to help you. And then if you do stuff like, throw extra hours at them or things like that, which sometimes we do, make sure that you sort of mention that along the way. It's like, hey, by the way, I only charge you for 10 hours, but I actually worked 15 hours on your project last week. And I'm not going to, I'm not looking for a sob story. I just want to let you know that like, I'm committed in this. I'm throwing some extra stuff at you because sometimes you get further into a project and they feel, because all they see is invoice, they feel like you're just there for the buck. And it doesn't hurt to let them know. It's like, I'm not just there. I'm not just here to turn a buck. I'm here because I'm trying to solve your problem. I'm trying to help you out and trying to make sure that you end up in a better place when we get done with it. Hopefully you guys are in a better place than you were when we started this. We're going to wrap this one up and we'll be back again soon with our next episode, right into our next topic. You may already know because we sort of talked about this. I think we're going to get into next time. We're just going to sort of like follow into this, and it's how to work with a customer that is budget, constrained in one way, form, or fashion. Talk about some of the different ways we can do it and some of the things you do not want to do if you get into those situations. Go out there, have yourself a great one. Leave us comments and feedback. We love that. And we will talk to you next time.